Okay, I thought we could open the floor up to discussing this general question. And the question is, what are the effective and legitimate roles of diaspora in supporting human rights, particularly in the context of how, in terms of the context of Canadian society, we can better engage the diaspora? So we'd like to entertain any thoughts and stories about this? Yes. In response to this particular question? Okay. Yes.
Thank you so much for, my name is Jean de Dieu Hakizimana, and thank you for organizing these events. It is always informative. And this question for supporting human rights in our community is very, very complex. When you are a refugee or immigrant or any person who lives, especially in Vancouver, people are divided in many ways. Some people are pro-actually government. Other people are against government. As a Canadian government, it is always difficult and complex to make those groups to support those kind of human rights. And among of diaspora groups, there are also people who are working for that government who chased them out to Canadian communities. So how to support the human rights in Vancouver and Canadian as a diaspora? It has been a challenge for my work I have been done for the last 15 years. Because many diaspora groups are afraid to tell their own stories. The right to tell your own stories, how are we going to achieve that? The stories we understand is not really sometimes the true stories people want to tell because they are afraid. They are afraid. And I know many of us, and many, many people I know, they have good stories they can tell, but they can't. So that's one of my challenges.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else like to? Yes, over here. Just push the button.
Hi, my name's Rebecca Meir, formerly of School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. I'd just like to build on the previous gentleman's point, because I do feel that in the increasing recognition of diasporas and the power of diasporas in conflict and post-conflict peace processes, there is also a risk that diasporas become instrumentalized and that diasporas are not, essentially the debate around international development and conflict needs to be integrated with the immigration debate within the host countries. And I say this from the perspective of Europe, where our immigration debates are very different. And we don't have resettlement refugees. We have essentially a situation where people come to our borders and claim asylum. And in the whole of Europe, there is an increasing emphasis on protecting the border, not the person from the global south who may have turned up. And increasingly, the immigration debate is politicized. And what that means is that the various nation states in Europe are chipping away at their obligations under the Geneva Convention. And it's all been quite ratcheted up since the July the 7th bombings in 2005. There's a whole security agenda emerging. Diasporas are problematized as being involved with security threats. And essentially a lot of the policies that we have, particularly in the UK, actively prevent integration of asylum seekers and refugees. So we have things such as there is no permanent refugee status in the UK anymore. It is all subject to review after 5 years. It doesn't allow for integration of refugees. And of course, when refugees diasporas fail to be seen to integrate, that's seen as a failure of the individual and the diaspora, not of the nation's policies. So really what I'm asking is, in terms of the international development and conflict debate, if you posit the diaspora as crucial, does it in some ways perpetuate the otherness and the idea of the diaspora as different and not integrating, and so continue to problematize it? And that's been inspired by that gentleman talking particularly about refugees not wanting to tell their stories, because, you know, the story is essentially your ability to claim asylum, and your story is your only actual weapon. So, of course, why would you want to tell your story when it's been so interrogated over and over again?
Okay, thank you. We'll get a few more, then we'll have some responses. Okay, yes.
Thank you, James. I have been in this conference for many times, and I feel cold, very, very cold.
Cold?
Yeah, it's a mental cold. It's not a physical one. Why do I say so? Because we are like playing in the sand, like the ostrich. So the real problem, we don't talk about it. We speak about strategy, prevention, and justice, but what is the root cause? Why the conflict? If we go, for instance, to Africa, why is Africa right now under this, and the conflicts, and the genocides and wars? Why don't we talk about why the conflict? Who is responsible of the conflict? Then what to do, and then how to do, and then how to bring justice. But I don't know if we are doing justice to ourselves, to our continent. So I just take a small example because I don't want to go back to this sad story. I am from Congo, in the great Africa Great Lakes region. Why there is a genocide in Congo right now, in Kivu, I'm from the eastern part, so I speak from experience. And we know that it is because of the minerals. We call it bloody mines. Because of the minerals, the coltan. Now, Canada, US, UK, France, Belgium, they are the ones who are, bringing this conflict because they profit from the conflict to exploit the mines. And then they are the ones who are supporting dictators. They are the ones who are giving the guns, the militia. They are the ones who are responsible, but nobody talks about it. The media doesn't talk about it, the Western media, even the universities. So then, if we cannot even go from the root side, how can we even speak about this conflict when we are hiding from the root cause of this conflict, which is the Western, who are looting the continent of Africa for their interest? They promote their democracy. On the other hand, they promote dictation on the other hand. We have to go back to the root. If we don't do that, James, we are wasting our time, and we are not doing justice to Africa. Thank you.
Yes, at the back there.
Thank you, James. Following up on just the last couple of comments that was made, diaspora not necessarily from the South. I am from the United States, and the reason I came to Canada is because of some serious injustices after the death of my wife of 18 years and the conflict that happened between me and her adult children. But most of the problems, so here was a conflict. So conflict is not necessarily within the countries and the tribes, but it's within ourselves, within our own family, within our own community, and we have to be very aware of it. That if we are not coming with some way of transforming that conflict, or coming with some of the idea that James presented earlier in some sort of a reconciliation of getting together and telling our story, under the weakness, there's always the aggression around that will actually take advantage of your weakness, and and I think that is something that we should be aware that so many of the conflict is within our own family, within our own roots. So that's one of the comments I wanted to make. But also in the comment that was made about the UK, now look at, for example, Israel just passed a law that any opposition or a protest against a settlement or against the government is banned or is illegal, and that is, in supposedly the only democratic country in the Middle East. And one more comment about this whole war in Iraq and in Afghanistan with the premise of establishing a democratic countries. And you talked about the gentleman from Iraq, about Barzani and all those very, very, the families that, they are absolutely corrupt and with absolutely no impunity against anything. And you have the same thing in Afghanistan with the brother of Karzai, of course. He was assassinated, but again, the same story of absolute corruption that is a part of this kind of like a vicious circle. But it is all seems like it originates within us, and it just goes around the circle. So this was just a comment, not a question. And thank you so much again for putting this conference together. Thanks.
Amos?
Thank you. Thank you, James, and thank you, Johan. I just want to make a quick few comments about the dialogues. I think we should be thankful that these dialogues are happening and that SFU has taken the challenge to put them up, and of course with the funding from CEDA. But as previous speakers have said, the universities have got a big role to play to influence governments, to influence policy. I remember when we started Focus on Africa, and was easier to back me up, I said universities train people in research to advise government on policy. And Canadian government is giving us money, giving the university money to put these dialogues up. It's the role of the university now not to shy away from the conflict, from the root cause of the conflict, and get down to the root cause, advise the governments who are supporting dictators, who are supporting the harnessing of conflict, so that it can stop. Because if the universities don't advise and they shy away from it, these dialogues will be useless. We talk here, we as diasporas, diaspora, if I want to answer my friend from Kenya, it's not about Africa, it's about the entire world, which is seated here. In Vancouver here, we have the whole world. Someone from the United States is now here, is saying it's diaspora. That's true. But we as diasporas have issues from where we come from. And these issues are being dialogued in these meetings. This is about the fourth meeting. We are talking about education, we've talked about health, we've talked about now peace building and peace and resolving conflict. But if the university does not research and find the root cause and advise the governments accordingly, these conflicts will continue, dictatorship will continue, and then we will be wasting our time. So the university has a big role.
Thank you, Amos. I think we'll have to stop the question. Okay, you just have your question, and that'll be the last one.
Exciting. I want to address what you just said, because I do believe that in the situation now, and with everything happening around the world, universities are meant to do just that. Mm-hmm. But building on the piecing it together. In Vancouver, it's a very multicultural place. I mean, I've grown up with nationalities from all over the world. But the one thing that we have to maybe start now is for you and I to work together. Because I'm sitting here listening and wondering, okay, what can I do? What can I do? Do I go and try and work for the government and change things in the system? Or do I work for a nonprofit? Or I'm just thinking. But one thing I think that might work is if we bridge the gap between the local citizens of Canada and the diasporas working together to pressure our government. Because even though you guys, and many people are from around the world, you are living in Canada. And I think we all are entitled to pressuring the government that we have here. And maybe we can do it together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for some very thought-provoking questions and comments. I don't think I'm going to be able to address all of them, but I think there's a common theme that seems to be running through all of them. And I thought I'd just briefly talk about that. That the first comment was about the fear that is experienced by the diaspora and the feeling that they are unable to really tell their stories. The second comment was about the way many of the developed countries have instrumentalized the diaspora. And the third comment was about skirting the root causes and so on. And I think these are all very important things. But in terms of what we are doing here, I mean, one of our ultimate goals is that when we talk about engaging the diaspora, there's really two parts to it. One is the internal part, that is within diaspora groups themselves. But that's only part of the equation. The second and equally, if not even more important, is external to diaspora groups. In other words, what within Canada is an enabling environment? What advice can we give to government and so on that will enable diaspora groups to be able to do the things we want? So this addresses questions of immigration policy, broader issues of resettlement and so on. Now on the issue of the root causes of conflict, that I think is very important. But to me, there's people like me as an academic do research conflict in Africa. But there's only so much that academic research can do. There's a role for the diaspora as well too. And the idea is by giving voice to diaspora groups, by creating this enabling environment, that your voices can complement the kind of academic research that we do. That's the idea. Okay. So I'll just leave it there.